Good evening, viewers, and very welcome to our annual product release event. There is a lot of things going on in the world at the moment, from COVID to the invasion of Ukraine, but tonight we are going for the next 45 minutes or so to focus solely on Capture 2022. I'm going to take you through all the new features and improvements of 2022. If you have questions or questions about the practicalities of 2022 in terms of licensing, upgrades, requirements, and things like that, then please take a look at our previous webcast. I have a lot to go through today, so I'm not going to have a lot of time for questions at the end. Still, I'm going to try and make room for them. So if I've missed anything important, point that out in the live chat and we'll try and cover that at the end of the webcast. Capture 2022 will be available tomorrow morning, European time. That means both downloading and upgrades purchasing in the web shop, as well as receiving updated key files if you've been promised upgrades for any of the various reasons we might have promised you that. So without further ado, we're going to jump straight into Capture 2022 and see what's new. The first thing we're going to talk about is the installation of Capture. The first thing you're going to notice is that the download time has changed dramatically from Capture 2021. The size of the download has gone down from almost 1800 megabytes to close to 100 megabytes. This means that not only is your first download tomorrow going to be a lot faster than you've seen before, but subsequent updates are also going to be a lot faster. One of the reasons or ways we've managed to reduce the size of the download so dramatically is by excluding the library from the installation package. This means that once you've started Capture, you will need to install a library if you want to use it. Now, there are situations where you will get away without a library, so in that sense, it's good that it's an option, although I understand most of you need the library. Fortunately, it's really easy to do. You simply go to the Library tab, where a new window appears, pointing out the fact that you don't have a library installed yet. All you need to do is click on the button to download and install the library, and Capture does that automatically for you. You no longer need to restart Capture after you've installed the library update, so once the download is finished, you can just continue using Capture as usual. Some of you might say, well, if you remove the library from the download, then no wonder it's smaller, but maybe I still need to download the same amount anyway. But the answer is you don't. The reason is we've also dramatically reduced the size of the library itself, from close to 1700 megabytes down to 650. We've managed to do this by some clever reuse of information across fixtures in the library and various other format improvements, internal format improvements. So this means that library updates are also much faster than they used to be. And this is perhaps the main point here, is the fact that you can now download a software update without having to download a library update. Because most of these situations where you download an updated Capture installer, you didn't actually need the updated library. So with these changes, you are going to have a much nicer experience with downloading and installing Capture. And also, don't forget that if you are logged onto the website with a verified user account, then you don't need to fill in the download form every time you download. So once you've got Capture installed and running, you've got the library in place, it's time to start taking a look at a few user interface changes. Starting with a Mac, we've redesigned the title bar, making use of the latest features in Mac OS. This means that the little red dot button at the top left corner now has a black dot inside it if your project has unsaved changes. The name of the file also appears at the center of the title bar, and you can right-click on it to see the path to the file and click on one of the items in the path to jump directly to that folder, as is standard in macOS. We've also made some changes on the Windows side of things. We have updated the title bar, including the little asterisk in the top left corner if there are unsaved changes in the project file. Now here are some important changes to the keyboard shortcuts of Capture. These are pretty global shortcuts that will affect all of you, so these are important to know when you start using 2022. It used to be that in order to disable snapping, you would hold the Escape key. Starting with 2022, you would now hold the Control key on Windows or the Command key on Mac to disable snapping. The Escape key can now be used to exit any modal editor, such as material mapping, fixture replace, or the model editor. And if you are not in a modal editor, you can also use the Escape key to deselect all selected objects. In addition to this, for those who use a mouse with a scroll wheel and don't like to press it for the middle mouse button, we've now added middle mouse button emulation, which uses the Alt key. So if you hold the Alt key and press the left mouse button, this now emulates the middle mouse button, which means you can navigate the design using the mouse and this emulated middle mouse button. I'm sure most of you will know what I'm talking about, and if you don't, you should give it a try in 2022. A small little addition we've done as well is added an option to the recent file menu that lets you clear it. Sometimes when you want to do a presentation, you might have other project files there hinting of other things you're working on that you don't want to show to your customers or software customers for that matter. So this is a really useful feature. It also clears the project files listed in the welcome window when you start Capture. So let's start designing with Capture 2022, and as is often the case, you will start in the library. So let's go to the Library tab in Capture 2022 and take a look at what's new. The first new object that we will come across is the cable object. This is something that I'm going to talk about more a little bit later in this presentation. But in short, we've added some cable management to Capture 2022. Another new object is the line snapper. You may already be familiar with the point and directional snappers that lets you build groups that snap together in custom ways. The line snapper lets you create the same type of snapping that you see between fixtures and trusses. That is, a point snaps anywhere along a line. You can actually set up the snappers that you've used from the library to snap with fixtures just like trusses do. This means that you could create custom truss items using the line snapper and have fixtures snap to your custom truss pieces. Speaking of truss, we have increased the level of detail of the generic truss items in the library. We have added more detailed information about the number of braces the trusses have, as well as the style of the endings of the truss, ranging from a cross brace to a plated ending, including also truss items that don't have any braces at the bottom, for instance, which is common with some pre-rigged trusses. This will improve the clarity and accuracy of your paperwork, and of course also make the visualization look more accurate and often pretty. However, we've also made major changes to truss items beyond the generic trusses. As you may know, we've only had generic trusses so far, but this is now changing in 2022. Thanks to improvements including the line snapper that I already mentioned, but also other group improvements that I will cover later, we are now able to build custom truss items. This means that in the library you will now find things like tank traps, stands, or ground support parts. And you can request these through library support as usual, of course. This is a top requested feature, and I very much look forward to your feedback on this one. Continuing further down the categories of the library tab, we find the symbols. Symbols have always been two things. It's been both fixture symbols and, well, generic symbols, indicating things like information or a hanging point. We've separated these two items in the library now so that we have fixture symbols separate from the more, let's say, generic symbols. These have now also been subcategorized to make it easier to find the symbol you are looking for. Now let's talk a little bit about measuring. You start drawing something in Capture and then you ask yourself, well, how far is it from X to Y or Y to Z or whatever? And a top requested feature for many years has been something like a tape measure tool. With Capture 2022, we are introducing the new measure tool. This is a tool that solves several problems, including the tape measure situation. Measure tool is available from the Edit menu, and there is a keyboard shortcut for it as well. When you enter the measure tool, the first thing that happens is that your design dims a little bit. This is a feature you can actually turn off if you want. But the design dims, and on top of it, a crosshair appears where the cursor is, where the mouse is. This crosshair also contains the relevant coordinates of the view you are in, so you can do more accurate positioning of the mouse or find out coordinates as you're hovering different things with the mouse. The mouse also snaps, and as I mentioned before, this can be disabled using the Control key on Windows or Command key on Mac. In order to start measuring a distance, you simply click at a point and move the mouse. As you move the mouse, the view constantly updates with the distance to the next position where you are placing the mouse. You can click there to, well, fixate the measure, and once you start measuring again, the previous measure disappears. You can also hold the Shift key to add additional points, which means that you could measure a path in 2D, of course, or take a measure across multiple points on a line. And that is particularly useful when you use that little button that appears that lets you convert the temporary measurement to a permanent distance measure. Another improvement in 2022 is that distance measures can now contain multiple points. There is also an option that we call cumulative that lets you choose whether the distance accumulates at every point or whether you are measuring individual segments. Both options are shown in this image. Of course, you don't have to use the measure tool to create multi-point distance measures. You can use the regular design view. You can select an endpoint, split that to add additional points, as well as select points and remove them. So there are in fact now two ways of working with measures. One is using the measure tool to create them, but then the more manual route of individually modifying the endpoints using the regular design features. We've also added more options to control the way the distance is shown, to give you the ability to say, for instance, I want it in millimeters, period, no mixing of units. or to override the measure unit used so that Capture doesn't use the default setting of your computer. These will be particularly appreciated by those who fancy a little bit more of a construction style paperwork. So I promised you before that I would speak a little bit about cabling. So let's get back to the cabling. And as you may understand now is that cabling reuses some of these new multi-point measurement features in the sense that a cable object is a kind of measurement in a way. Each cable object that you add to the design represents a cable run. This means that you measure a distance that you need to run one or multiple cables. We are not trying to solve the problem of combining cables of various lengths and solving that kind of puzzle. What we are trying to solve here is, well, we need at least 35 meters from there to there. And Capture will round that up to a whole meter, for instance. This is configurable. You can also do things like add some extra distance to the cable if you need a bit of slack, for instance. And of course, label the endpoints, so to document that you're going from a particular piece of equipment to another. Now, a cable tool wouldn't be that interesting if there wasn't a cable report as well. So you will find a new report in 2022 that lists, counts, and breaks down the cabling you've added to your design. Of course, you can group it, as I mentioned, so you can group it by cable type, for instance, and configure it as you are used to with any of the other reports. Now let's talk about plot symbols. We have always been drawing, in a sense, our own plot symbols for fixtures in the library, and they've all been based on the USITT RP-2 standard. Now, occasionally you may not like our symbols for whatever reason, and that's perfectly fine. So a custom request has been the ability to import and use your own plot symbols. In Capture 22, we're introducing symbol import. What we've done is we've added support for SVG files. SVG is short for Scalable Vector Graphic. This is the file format we feel is best suited for the task. One of the reasons is that SVG supports solid shapes with outlines, as opposed to, for instance, DWG, which doesn't really have a concept of solid objects unless you're working in 3D. So, if you want to import your own plot symbols into 2022, you would go to the new Symbols category of the Design tab. You hit the plus button, you select the SVG file that you would like to import, and voila, you can drag and drop it onto any of the fixtures in your design. You can also drag and drop it anywhere not on a fixture if you have a symbol that illustrates something else and you just want to put that symbol in there. Symbols have a number of configuration properties. You can change the scale of the symbol, for instance. Now keep in mind that SVG files are actually to scale, so you could draw them in the right size already in SVG, but of course sometimes you need to override that, so you can do that as well. You can also add a vertical offset to the symbol, as in this case where the profile is slightly offset because we want it centered where the yoke will be mounted on the body of the fixture. There are also other properties you can play with, such as the placement of text, for instance, or the aperture width, which effectively controls the size of any, say, barn doors that you would attach to the fixture. So we much look forward to seeing what you will be doing with the new symbol import in Capture 2022. Now let's talk about groups. We have done a number of improvements to groups in the new version. I'm getting tired of saying 2022. And we've made good use of all these changes in our new custom truss items in the library. One major change is that groups now have a position by themselves. Previously, if you had grouped objects and you went and checked out the position X, Y, and Z properties, you would actually be editing the position of the individual objects in the group. This is no longer the case because the group itself has a position. This enables and opens up for a number of other features. For instance, scenes now track the position of groups rather than the individual objects in the groups. So if you have made a group of something and you are tracking that across different scenes, now you can add an object into that group and it will automatically follow the group across those scenes. This was not possible before. You can also remove objects from within groups so that you don't have to break the group and regroup it. And each time you double-click on an object in a group, you get this drill-down style selection that you may be used to from other software. Furthermore, if you have snappers and report items in the group, these are now no longer visible by default once you've grouped the objects with the snappers and the report items. This means that you can now build items that end up in reports without cluttering the design with the widget for the snappers or report items. So you will find that the custom truss items in the library that are new in 2022 make extensive use of all of these new group features. So as I mentioned, I missed skipping a few slides here. You can add and remove objects from groups, and the scenes track the group's position rather than the individual objects. Let's move on to DMX universes. We have redesigned the channel view to make it more compact and easier to read in terms of graphical quality. Actually, we hadn't touched the channel view for a great many years and it wasn't looking very good anymore. So one of the things we've done is we've removed one of the text rows in the channel view. This row was the channel name row, where usually you could see the first 4 letters of every channel name. So that is gone now, making the view much more compact. We have also improved the overlap handling. So sometimes when you patch multiple fixtures on the same channel, you would get this stack of fixture names. We've eliminated that in the redesign, and also generally improved overlap handling in other situations where fixtures overlap. However, now that we have removed the channel name, we felt the need for something more. So we are also introducing the fixtures mode view of universes. In this view, we are not so much focusing on the layout of fixtures in the universe as simply which fixtures are in the universe and what is inside them. In this view, you can see the individual parameters of every fixture, and 16-bit parameters are in a sense combined, so you don't see the coarse and fine channels separately. This means that you see percentage levels and DMX values from 0 to 65,000, which makes it a lot easier to troubleshoot 16-bit fixtures. In addition to just seeing it, you can now also interact with the parameter sliders. This is useful in many situations where you need to troubleshoot things or control something that the control plane cannot control for whatever reason. It's not that we're trying to get away from making the control plane better, but we are acknowledging the fact that sometimes you just have to get direct access to the parameters. We've also changed the way universes are named by default, in that now the default is numeric rather than alphabetic. Perhaps you saw the poll on the Facebook group where it was very obvious that this was the better way to do things. In addition to that, we've also added a way of adding multiple universes that lets you create hundreds of DMX universes without repetitive clicking. Wow, isn't that great? Cameras. Let's talk about cameras. Since Capture, I think even 3.0, we've had 5 programmable camera slots or positions in the design, and these have been shared across all the views. In Capture 2022, we are introducing a new category in the design tab called camera positions. In here, you can create as many camera positions as you need. They are organized in catalogs. You don't have to use the catalogs, but there is one there by default, and you could have all the camera positions in there if catalogs isn't for you. But you can also use the catalogs to group positions, for instance, by song or scene or whatever makes sense to you. The camera positions category of the design tab is always linked to one of the design views, and you choose which view at the bottom corner down here. Whenever you select a camera position in here, it appears in that view that you've chosen. Whenever you record a camera position or update one, it's that view that is used when doing that. You can name all the camera positions, you can name the catalogs, and you can assign numbers to them. And this is pretty important because of the way we can DMX control views. In 2022, we are introducing 2 new DMX modes for the view control. These are the new default modes now. The difference between the 2 modes is the same as before, actually. It's the selection of filters and scenes. But the other and the main difference is that rather than sending the camera XYZ and rotation XYZ over DMX, you now send the number of the catalog and camera position that you want the view to go to. This means that rather than controlling the position and orientation of the camera from the console, you are selecting a camera position. You are also able to choose at what speed the view moves to the newly selected camera position, as well as how dampened the movement is. That is, whether you go instantly at a constant speed or there is a speed up and slow down as you approach the new camera position. And finally, there is also a dampening parameter. Sorry, just mentioned that. There is a curvature parameter. This is useful when, for instance, you are house left, focus on the lead singer, and you want to swing around the lead singer to house right in a sort of curved fashion. What that actually means is that you want to keep the distance between the camera and the focus point as you move to the new camera position. This is achieved using the new curvature parameter. There are 2 great benefits of this new system that may not be obvious. The first one is that camera movement will be a lot smoother because you may be running a 60 Hz screen and getting 60 FPS, but DMX tends to not go much above 44 Hz, which means that you are never going to get as smooth camera transitions over DMX as you can using this system. Another less obvious reason is the fact that this also works when you render movie snapshots. This means that with this system you will have perfectly smooth camera transitions when rendering movie snapshots, and that is really great. And on top of that, when recording camera positions in movie snapshots, Capture now also stores and recalls your selection of filter and scene, which was not previously possible, and the field of view setting of the camera. Now let's move on and talk a little bit more about visualization and various visualization related features. And I'm going to go a little bit by fixture type, starting with laser projectors. Ever since we introduced laser projectors to Capture, the only way to really work with them has been to have a laser control software on the network sending content to your laser projectors. In Capture 2022, we are introducing the ability to play back ILD files. An ILD file is a little bit like a movie for a laser projector. The way this works is that what was previously known as a video player is now actually a media player. This means we can load it with images, movies, as well as ILD files. When you hook that up to a laser projector, you can now get laser content in the projector straight from the ILD file. This is obviously great for all the scenarios where you don't have a laser control software at hand and you just have some simple content that you need to show in the projector. Now let's move on and take a look at a new feature in video projectors. And this one is pretty straightforward, and it's lens shift. For those who are not familiar with what lens shift is, this is in effect moving the lens in front of the projector, and this creates the effect, or it has the effect, that the entire projected image moves without being distorted. This means you can have a projector on the floor projecting on the wall without having to bother with keystoning. Lens shift is controlled in the control pane using the shift parameters, and we've updated the library with the maximum shift capabilities of various video projectors and their optics. Let's move on to more regular lighting fixtures and start talking about one of the major visualization enhancements in Capture 2022. This is a multifaceted enhancement that comes with many changes. In short, what we call aperture is the opening of the fixture where light comes out of the fixture, and we have completely reworked the way this is visualized, technically and visually. The lens in front of fixtures now comes in a glass-like material that catches reflections of other items in the environment, even if the fixture isn't on. This really helps bring fixtures to life and brings the entire rig to life, especially as fixtures are moving and they are catching various reflections in the rig. The lenses themselves can also have various surface forms, so they can have a curvature, which is common of course. They can also have the Fresnel ripple effect, or simply just be flat. And this is hard for me to show live like this. I'm sure we'll be showing more of this in more feature highlight webcasts further on. But as you zoom in to a fixture, the aperture maintains a perfect crisp shape, and as you zoom out, there is less graphical distortion effects that could happen as a result of lack of precision before. One type of fixture where this is particularly obvious excuse me, is fixtures like pixel strips, which have many really small apertures on them, that now look great regardless of the distance you are looking at the fixture from. Another nice feature in 2022 is the ability to simulate fixtures that have their color control using CIE color picking. CIE color control is a really important improvement to the way we control colors in fixtures. It is coming. There aren't that many fixtures that have it yet, but we really hope that every fixture manufacturer picks up on this. This is the most reliable way of selecting and visualizing colors in any pre-production scenario. What happens is that you pick a CIE X and Y chromaticity color and combine that with an intensity. So you specify a color and at what intensity you want it to be. This avoids problem with various dimming curves and color compensation factors that many fixtures come with today that make it really hard for us to depict the correct color in many scenarios. I'm sure there will be a blog post about this within short, where we talk more about this and urge fixture manufacturers to really use CIE color picking. So, in terms of general visualization, we've also made a really important enhancement in that we've added support for HDR. Now, HDR is a term that is used a lot and in many different contexts, but what we support here specifically is HDR displays. That is, displays that can go much brighter than your regular old monitor could. This is very good for the level or the perceived realism of the visualization, since now you can actually be blinded by the visualization on screen. And it is, lighting after all is the play of intensity and color. And now, for the first time in very long, we can have this intensity experience in front of our screen. If you've bought yourself a new nice OLED TV, for instance, in your living room, then you have an HDR display. If you have one of the new iPhones or iPads, you also have an HDR display. And you will also find HDR displays in most Android phones as well. Although I think the best HDR display on the market at the moment is Apple's Liquid Retina display. That one goes up to 1700 nits, which is very powerful. Capture 2022 supports HDR displays on both Windows and Mac. And we support rendering movies to HDR on Mac. The reason we only support it on Mac is that Windows doesn't come with an H.265 or HEVC encoder. This is only available on Mac at the moment. I can't show you this because of technical limitations in the streaming and YouTube, etc., but we did do a blog post about this quite recently, so I encourage you to go and read up on that as well. Apart from HDR, we've also made improvements to the tone mapping, the color handling, and brought it closer to the latest ASIS standards. So you will probably see, or depending on the colors you're working with and the fixtures, you will see much better handling of deeply saturated blues, for instance. So I've managed to blast through at least 98% of all the new features and enhancements in Capture 2022. We really look forward to reading or seeing and hearing your feedback on the improvements we've made. It will be available for download tomorrow morning, European time. And now I'm going to take a look and see if maybe there just might be a question or two. So as I said before, I don't want to go through whether we've done this and that in this version, but mostly catch up on something important that I have missed. Jeremy is asking, will camera positions remember the field of view too, or just the positions? So the camera positions in the Design tab will also remember the field of view. I am uncertain about the regular 5 camera positions that we still have. I would have to get back to you on that. But yes, field of view is also remembered. Alexander had a follow-up question on that, but I think I just answered it. Salvo asked that he had seen an old webcast with animated characters playing drums, and basically wondering whether these are animated assets. And we did post the HDR demo video contains something like this as well, but that is done using DMX movers actually. Andreas is asking, which is the latest version of Capture needed to get an upgrade license to 2022? I'm worried that I might give the wrong answer here, so take a look at our website tomorrow to have the properly correct answer. I'd rather not say in case I'm wrong here. There are so many old versions of Capture now that I'm starting to be confused by them. João Oliveira is asking basically whether 2022 will use more graphics power than 2021 or not. And the fact is that with every Capture version, we always spend some time on performance improvements. And as a general rule, the next version of Capture is usually faster on any hardware than the previous version. Of course, if you have an HDR screen connected and you've enabled HDR, which is a new feature, this might use a little bit more horsepower than we did before. But as a general rule, 2022 will be faster than 2021. And we did in fact spend quite a bit of time on general performance enhancements in terms of what happens when you select large number of objects, move them around, and things like this that aren't necessarily visualization connected as much as general user interface responsiveness. Studio is asking, when will 2022 be released to the public? And the answer is tomorrow morning, European time. Johannes is asking whether the old camera fixture modes, the old DMX patchable views, are still available. And yes, we've kept all the modes in there. They are still available because otherwise we would ruin the designs you already have. Pierre is asking what type of cable is supported in the new cabling function. And the truth is we support any cable. Basically, there is a text field where you enter yourself what type of cable it is. This gives you the ultimate flexibility in choice of cable types. We have a question about CITP with Grand MA3. That is really a question for MA and not us. I don't think they have decided to move in our direction in the past 10 years. And a few more detailed questions as well. But if you're wondering whether we've done this or that feature, go and check out our website tomorrow morning. We will be updating the What's New page that shows you all the new features in 2022. You will be able to download the installer package. That is both the regular/paid version as well as the student edition, and of course the mobile app for iOS, which will be available tomorrow as well. And if you've been promised an upgrade for any reason, we will be mailing those out tomorrow as well. So with that, I thank you so much for watching our webcast tonight, and we look forward to all the feedback for Capture 2022, and we hope that you will enjoy the new features and enhancements that we've added. Good evening and see you soon again.